By the reckoning of science, our world has been turning for over 4.5 billion years, a span of time so vast it defies human comprehension. For the overwhelming majority of that history, this planet was a barren, silent sphere, utterly devoid of life as we know it.
To grasp this immense chronology, we must shrink it to a scale we can understand. Imagine the Earth's entire existence compressed into a single calendar year. On this cosmic calendar, one day represents nearly 12.5 million years. 1 hour, more than 518,000 years. And a single second ticks by in 143 years of human history.
Before the stroke of midnight on January 1st, there is nothing. Only a swirling nebula of gas, cosmic dust, and stone. A great disk of primordial matter spinning around a newly ignited star, our sun.
Then, with the very first second of the new year, the Earth is born. It is not the blue marble we know, but a horrifying maelstrom of molten rock. Its surface is a global ocean of incandescent magma, subjected to a constant, relentless bombardment from the debris of a chaotic young solar system. On January 3rd, this violent infancy reaches a crescendo. A protoplanet, perhaps the size of Mars, collides with our world in a cataclysm of unimaginable force. A colossal fragment is thrown into space, but Earth's gravity refuses to let it go. This captive shard slowly coalesces into the Moon, our planet's sole silent companion.
An entire month passes. By February 4th, the surface has finally cooled enough to form a solid crust. As the temperature drops, the superheated water vapor in the thick, toxic atmosphere begins to condense. Rain falls for centuries, creating the first oceans. But beneath this fragile shell, the planet's heart of lava still rages. Volcanoes constantly erupt, and the ground shudders without cease. No modern organism could possibly survive this alien world. And yet, even in these brutal conditions, something extraordinary is about to happen. On the 1st of March, in the shallow, chemical-rich waters, the first life emerges. Simple, single-celled bacteria. They are infinitesimally small, primitive beyond measure, but they represent the dawn of biology. The planet continues to evolve. By April 18th, the molten iron at its center has finally settled, forming a solid inner core and a liquid outer core. This dynamo generates a powerful magnetic field, a planetary shield that now protects the fledgling atmosphere from the sun's stripping radiation. The conditions for life, especially in the oceans, have just become profoundly more stable. The great, silent stage is set, but for an eternity to come, its only players will be these microscopic architects of our future.
By the 20th of May, in our condensed calendar of Earth's history, the slow, simmering evolution of single-celled life produced a revolutionary. They are known to us as cyanobacteria, the humble architects of a new world. These microscopic organisms, often called blue-green algae, possessed a unique and terrible gift. Through the alchemy of photosynthesis, they learned to harness the raw power of the sun, and in doing so, they began to exhale a waste product never before seen in any significant quantity. A gas that was sharp, corrosive, and for the existing inhabitants of the Earth, utterly lethal. That gas was oxygen. In a process mirrored today in the green leaves of every plant, they drew in carbon dioxide and, under the sun's gaze, transformed it into life-giving energy. But the byproduct, this oxygen, began to accumulate, first saturating the oceans and then seeping into the atmosphere itself. The proliferation of these new microorganisms, unchecked by any predator, would trigger the first and perhaps most profound global extinction in the planet's history. A cataclysm we call the Huronian extinction,
named for the region around North America's Lake Huron, where its geological scars are laid bare.
In the rock strata corresponding to that epoch, around the 21st of June in our calendar year, the story is written. The evidence speaks not of a reduction in oxygen, but of its devastating rise. The cyanobacteria, in their silent global conquest, had poisoned their own world. With no enemies to limit their spread, they had blanketed the surface of every body of water, relentlessly pumping this toxic gas into the air. This uncontrolled release triggered an irreversible change. The oxygen waged a chemical war on the atmosphere's methane, a potent greenhouse gas that had, until then, kept the young planet warm.
As the methane blanket was stripped away, the planet's temperature plummeted. It was a world plunged into a planetary deep freeze, an event so severe it is sometimes called Snowball Earth. Organisms that had not already perished from the corrosive effects of oxygen simply froze. The Earth was encased in ice from the poles to the equator. And this fate, ironically, also befell the cyanobacteria themselves. Their own success had led to their near annihilation. The subsequent decline in their population finally allowed the atmosphere to begin a slow recovery. The world thawed, and temperatures gradually returned to a range hospitable for life. In our calendar, the end of this great Huronian glaciation can be marked on the 16th of July. It was the longest, but not the most famous, ice age our world has ever endured.
On the 23rd of July, the first multicellular organisms tentatively appeared, only for another planetary cooling to drive them swiftly back into extinction. And then, the Earth fell quiet. The vast stretch of time from the 9th of August to the 4th of November is known to science unofficially as the boring billion. For these 3 conditional months, a few crucial events unfolded, but on the whole, the engine of evolution seemed to idly turn, moving at a glacial pace. The primary reason for this stagnation was the very element that had caused the earlier catastrophe: oxygen, but now at levels too low to fuel the energetic demands of complex life.
Yet, within this immense quiet, another revolution was taking shape. On the 17th of August, a new kind of single-celled organism emerged, one that possessed a nucleus. They were named eukaryotes. Their predecessors, the simple cells without this feature, are known as prokaryotes. The presence of a nucleus was more than a simple architectural change. It provided a far more sophisticated method for copying DNA. A prokaryote, when it divides, essentially creates a perfect clone of itself, copying its DNA with almost no variation. Change, therefore, was agonizingly slow. The nucleus, however, allowed for a more complex and protected library of genetic information, opening the door for greater variability, for error, and for innovation. It was the dawn of individuality, the biological spark that would, after 1 billion years of silence, finally set the stage for the explosion of life to come.
With the emergence of the cell nucleus, life discovered a revolutionary new strategy. The long chain of DNA was no longer copied as a single static manuscript. Instead, its code could be broken into fragments, shuffled, and reassembled with each new generation. This was a pivotal moment, a biological gamble that unleashed an unprecedented wave of diversity. Evolution now had an engine of near infinite potential, a mechanism that would determine the fate of every organism to come.
On the 28th of October in our cosmic year, this new potential gives rise to a third kingdom of life: Futs. For millions of years, they exist in the deep, but on the 11th of November, they begin their patient, relentless march onto the barren land.
7 days later, on the 18th of November, the oceans witnessed the rise of a new dynasty. Creatures that would dominate the planet for an age. The arthropods. From the great diversity of sea scorpions in the Cambrian seas to the spiders that would one day haunt the land, they were masterpieces of adaptation. Nature had gifted them an articulated exoskeleton, a suit of biological armor, and a vast arsenal of appendages for hunting, sensing, and defending against the multiplying dangers of the world. After the so-called boring billion years of slow microbial progress, the final chapters of our calendar year explode with breathtaking complexity. Early on the morning of November 19th, a fuse is lit. Science calls it the Cambrian Explosion. In a geological instant, the seas and oceans, once home to simple, soft-bodied forms, become densely crowded with a bewildering array of creatures. It is an evolutionary frenzy, a biological Big Bang, where nearly all modern animal body plans are forged in the crucible of competition. Before the day is out, the first intrepid animals have crawled from the water, taking their first tentative steps onto the vast, empty continents. As evening falls on this single momentous day, the Paleozoic era begins. On our calendar, it will last for nearly 3 weeks, ending only on the 12th of December. The land itself now begins to change. On the 28 coastlines, but soon, a verdant carpet spreads across the once naked rock. These pioneering forests would not only transform the landscape, they would re-engineer the very sky, pumping the atmosphere full of oxygen and, in their passing, laying down the immense coal seams that would one day fuel a new kind of civilization. But the planet giveth, and the planet taketh away. On the 26th of November, a great dying begins. At the boundary of the Ordovician and Silurian periods, life faces its first great terrestrial test. The culprit, it is believed, was not an impact from space, but a fury from within the Earth itself. Evidence points to 2 catastrophic supervolcanoes erupting simultaneously on opposite sides of the world, one in what is now southern China, the other in North America. A veil of ash choked the skies, plunging the world into a long winter and triggering a cascade of death. By some estimates, 60% of all marine invertebrate species were wiped from existence. Yet, life endures. And on the 29th of November, the evolutionary arms race produces an adaptation so familiar to us, yet so terrifyingly new for its time: teeth. Fish are the first to wield this revolutionary tool, transforming the act of feeding from simple filter feeding to active, aggressive predation. The age of the bite had begun. Soon this innovation would spread, taking on a myriad of bizarre and specialized forms, each honed for a specific purpose, a testament to the brutal elegance of natural selection. On the 2nd of December, the planet's now thriving ecosystems would face another, even greater catastrophe. Life's grand experiment, it seems, is forever punctuated by these moments of near total annihilation, each one a filter that culls the weak, rewards the resilient, and ultimately reshapes the very definition of existence. The world was a paradise, forged in the Devonian period. Before the Great Dying, life luxuriated in conditions we might call comfortable. The oceans, vast and teeming, held a steady, warm temperature of around 26 degrees. At the poles, there were no frozen caps of ice. Instead, the planet was draped in a verdant cloak of primitive forests, a world of towering ferns and ancient flora. But this green Eden held a terrible secret. Its very success was poisoning the cradle of life. These new triumphant plants, along with sprawling blooms of algae, were relentlessly pumping a volatile gas into the atmosphere: oxygen. As they died, the decaying organic matter and the rich soils they created washed into the seas. This deluge of nutrients became a feast for microorganisms, which exploded in population. Their frantic, blooming life came at a cost. They began pulling oxygen out of the water, suffocating the very oceans that gave them life. For the majority of marine animals, including the last of the jawless fish, this sudden, drastic drop in the life-giving gas was an insurmountable crisis. The oceans grew silent. The catastrophe had entered a new phase, triggering a brutal ice age.
If we imagine the entire history of our planet compressed into a single calendar year, this devastation was but a moment. Life, tenacious and stubborn, began its recovery in what would amount to just 2 or 3 days. Animals not only returned to the seas, but began a bold new conquest: the land itself.
By the 5th of December on our cosmic calendar, the slow ballet of tectonics was complete. All the world's continents had drifted together, locking into place to form the supercontinent of Pangaea. But peace was not to last. The 12th of December marks a day of almost unimaginable tragedy. On this date falls the Great Permian Extinction, the most profound mass death event in the planet's history. By some estimates, up to 96% of all marine species vanished forever. On land, nearly 73% of vertebrate life was extinguished. Even the resilient insects suffered, with losses reaching as high as 86% of their class.
Yet this very same day of annihilation also marked a new beginning. It was the dawn of the Mesozoic era, the age of dinosaurs. The first of these legendary creatures we know of appeared on the 13th of December, and in their shadow, around the 15th, another kind of animal emerged. The first mammals, or perhaps more ringer than 12 or 13 centimeters. It was a noctis, and hiding from the giants in burrows during the day.
On the 16th of December, the world itself began to change again. Pangaea, the great monolith, started to crack and groan, breaking apart into the continents we recognize today. This geological upheaval triggered immense climatic shifts, leading to yet another mass extinction, the Triassic-Jurassic event. Nearly half of all animal life on Earth was wiped out. It is believed that it was this cataclysm, this clearing of the stage, that finally allowed for the total, undisputed dominance of the dinosaur.
Their reign was long, an epoch of giants, but it too would end.
On our cosmic calendar, the age of dinosaurs lasted until the evening of the 27th of December. It is a humbling thought that the most famous of them, the Titansul Day,
the end came from the sky. The most widely accepted theory holds that a colossal meteorite, an emissary of cosmic violence, struck the Earth. The scar of its arrival, a crater measuring some 300 kilometers across, now lies hidden beneath the waters of the Gulf of Mexico. A silent, submerged tombstone for an empire of giants, and a permanent reminder that on this planet, no reign is forever. The Age of Titans comes to a thunderous close. With this single cataclysmic event, the Mesozoic era is wiped from the cosmic calendar, and the Cenozoic, the era in which we now live, begins. The world is scrubbed clean, a blank slate awaiting a new story. But this new story is slow to unfold. For months, the Earth heals. Then, on the 28th day of December, the familiar forms begin to appear. The ancestors of the animals we know now finally take the stage, their calls echoing through forests reborn from ash.
By the 30th of December, the world of plants has also taken on a modern face. The great floral kingdoms are established, and on this same day, deep in the canopy, the first hominid apes emerge, a subtle hint of the consciousness that is to come. But they are not us. Not yet. Our own direct lineage, the genus Homo, waits in the wings until the very final evening of this impossibly long year. Only on the evening of December 31st do the first true human ancestors arise. All of our subsequent history, every war and every poem, every discovery and every heartbreak, is compressed into the final fleeting moments of this single day.
Imagine the clock. An hour remains before the stroke of midnight. It is now that Heidelberg Mgun. At 23 hours and 18 minutes, the Neanderthals appear. A robust, intelligent, and tragically doomed branch of our family tree. They will lose the battle for survival to our own species, which arrives a mere 18 minutes later, at 23 hours and 36 minutes. Though the Neanderthals were the first to venture out of Africa, spreading far across the cold landscapes of Europe, our ancestors proved to be more adaptable, more organized. At 23 hours and 47 minutes, modern humans, the Cro-Magnons, have settled the Middle East. Just 4 minutes later, at 23:51, they reach Southeast Asia, their relentless advance continuing across the island chains of the Pacific towards the shores of Australia. It is here, in this moment of expansion, that the entire human story could have been extinguished before it had truly begun. With roughly 10 minutes left until the new year, the ground in modern-day Indonesia begins to shake. The Toba supervolcano erupts. It is an explosion of such unimaginable force that it alters the climate of the entire globe, plunging the world into a volcanic winter. The sky is choked with ash. The sun is a pale, distant memory. Scientists estimate that in the aftermath, the total human population on the planet was slashed to as few as 10,000 individuals. We were an endangered species, clinging to existence by a thread. But humanity endured. We survived the bottleneck and continued our journey. At 23 hours and 53 minutes, a revolutionary tool appears: spoken language. A minute later, at 23:54, Homo sapiens finally sets foot in Europe. Within another 2 minutes, the Neanderthals, pushed into less and less hospitable lands, vanish completely, either dying out or being assimilated into the swelling ranks of our ancestors. At 23 hours and 55 minutes, man gains his first and most loyal companion. The dog is domesticated. Some scholars believe this very partnership may have been the decisive factor, the slight edge that secured our victory in the evolutionary race. 2 minutes later, across a frozen land bridge over the Bering Strait, people cross from Asia into North America, beginning the settlement of a new world. And with just 2 minutes left on the clock, at 23:58, the domestication of livestock begins, and the first permanent settlements rise from the earth. The entire history of what we call civilization is packed into the final 60 seconds. With 17 seconds to midnight, we learn to smelt bronze. With 23 seconds left, the first symbols of writing appear. At 27 seconds, the Great Pyramid of Giza pierces the Egyptian sky. On the 37th second, we master the technology of iron. The 40th second is considered the founding of Rome. A second later, the great philosophical currents of Buddhism and Confucianism begin to flow. And on the 43rd second, Alexander the Great carves his empire across the Middle East and Central Asia. All of it, a frantic, brilliant flash in the final seconds of a very long year. It forces us to wonder, what will we accomplish in the next tick of the cosmic clock? In just a few seconds, the dominion of the Roman Empire is established across the entire Mediterranean basin. In the very next second, from the dust of its provinces, a new faith, Christianity, begins its inexorable rise. By the 48th second of this cosmic year, the world plunges into the long shadow of the Middle Ages. And at the 49th, another world religion, Islam, rises from the desert sands, forever altering the course of empire.
With only 10 seconds remaining until the new year, the ancient state of Rus takes root in the vast forests of Eastern Europe. A mere 5 seconds later, Columbus makes landfall in a world previously unknown to the old. But all of this is but a prelude to the final, frantic second. In this single tick of the clock, the human population explodes from 1 billion to over 8 billion souls. The Russian Empire crumbles, giving way to the Soviet Union. 2 world wars scar the face of the earth, and yet, humanity reaches for the heavens, taking its first steps into space. The very fabric of communication is rewoven with the invention of the internet. This entire whirlwind of change, of creation and destruction, all transpired in the blink of an eye. The year is now ending, and what the coming second of history will hold is being written by us. We stand at the precipice, deciding whether this next moment brings another great extinction, or if it marks the dawn of our expansion beyond the cradle of a single world.